What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We're back talking college ball again. I'm sorry, I know it's been a while. The off season has made it a grind to come up with good topics, but I've been taking a few weeks to sit back, analyze a lot of teams, and Oklahoma, once again, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I know last year they had a really bad season. It was one of the worst in the history of their program. But I believe this year Brent Venables has corrected a lot of the problems that held them back last year. And I expect this to be a team that has the potential to compete for a spot in the CFP. I want to explain to you guys why you should be drinking the Oklahoma Kool-Aid along with me on this episode. DJ Lagway is a huge reason why Florida is receiving a lot of attention right now, and rightfully so. He was a freshman All-American. He helped Billy Napier right the ship on what at one point looked what was about to be a disastrous season. But Cormani McClain, remember him? Former five-star recruit, number one cornerback in the country. He commits to Deion Sanders at Colorado. Things don't work out. He ends up not having a lot of options in the transfer portal. He goes to Florida as a preferred walk-on. He recently got a full-time scholarship, and he's been turning into a monster this offseason. And his story and what Billy Napier has done with that program to bring in a player like him, it's a testament to the monster that Billy Napier is about to build Florida back into. And then I want to dive into some more things around college football pertaining to the SEC. LSU ceiling this year. We might finally see Brian Kelly be able to make some noise. Probably make it to the CFP, compete for the national title. I know it's been a while. Brian Kelly probably is the most overrated coach in college football right now, but LSU stacked this year, and if there ever was a time for them to make a run, it definitely is this year. LaNorris Sellers, how good is this guy going to be? He just was on the tear at the end of last season. He was probably the hottest quarterback in college football. And then I'm going to rank the 10 best rivalries in college football. Smash that like button. Helps us rank higher in the YouTube search algorithm. Also, subscribe. Hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. And let's dive into it. Last year I came on here and I told you guys I was drinking the Oklahoma Kool-Aid, and I was expecting them to win 9-10 games, make a statement their first season in the SEC, and that prediction went completely left, and Oklahoma was one of the worst teams in the conference. Their offense was abysmal. Their defense played really well, but you know, one thing that often gets left out when Oklahoma's 2024 campaign is discussed is the amount of injuries that they had to deal with. After fall camp ended, you know, the season was pretty much over for Oklahoma going into week one. They were down several starters on the offensive line. They already were replacing a lot of starters from the previous year on that unit. The wide receiver position suffered the injury bug as well. And with you having a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, it was just hard to get chemistry down packed. And when you're playing in a conference as deep as what the SEC is, being able to overcome the amount of injuries that Oklahoma had to last year, yeah, you were going to have a tough time being able to survive. But this season, though, Brent Venables has corrected all of the issues that plagued Oklahoma's offense last year. You bring in John Mateer out of the transfer portal from Washington State. He reminds me a lot of Bo Nix. He has a similar skill set to him, really athletic, elusive running the ball. He's also very accurate, very decisive. And with him following his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, down to Norman, with the talent that Oklahoma has recruited on offense, you have a really good group of wide receivers. You're stacked at running back. Your offensive line should be improved. The defense that Oklahoma had last year was championship caliber. Now that you have a capable offense that's going to be able to sustain drives, keep your defense rested, this is a team that now is going to be able to play complementary football. And despite Oklahoma having a difficult schedule coming up, this is a team that has recruited in the top 10 numerous times over Brent Venables. They've also done a really good job of using the transfer portal, and player development has been a strong point of Oklahoma football under Brent Venables. This is a program that is built to compete in the SEC. They've out-recruited the majority of teams in this league, and they just had bad injury luck last year. And Brent Venables, he made a bad mistake when he promoted Seth Littrell from within. I don't really think you could have faulted him too much for making that decision. When you have somebody on the staff that's familiar with a guy that you were recruiting out of high school, it makes it a little bit more difficult to bring somebody from outside because you don't really want to ruin that dynamic. But Ben Arbuckle, when he was calling plays for Washington State, they were 12th in college football in points per game. They were 9th in pass efficiency. OU last year had one of the worst offenses in all of college football. They were 110th in points per game. Ben Arbuckle is going to come in and correct that problem. Oklahoma is going to go from having one of the worst offenses in the nation to maybe one of the best this season. They're not lacking of talent. You know, they've had 3 top 10 recruiting classes in the last 4 years. They rated 7th in blue chip ratio going into last season. That was 3rd highest in the SEC. Oklahoma this year will be a borderline playoff team and expect them to win 9 games. You fix the quarterback problem, bringing in John Mateer. You have a new offensive coordinator in Ben Arbuckle. We know that this is going to be an elite defense, especially with Brent Venables taking over the play calling. Stop sleeping on Oklahoma. You need to start drinking that Oklahoma Kool-Aid if you're not already with me. The Sooners are going to be one of the biggest surprises in college football in 2025. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. When you ask most people why they're high on Florida football going into this year, it mainly is because of DJ Lagway and how good he was during his true freshman campaign, and that's for a very good reason. Cormani McClain, though, he is one of the most overlooked stories in college football right now, and he's a huge reason why I'm a huge believer in what Billy Napier is about to turn Florida into. Remember, this was somebody that was on top of the world a few years ago. He was number 1 coming out of high school at his position. He goes to Colorado with Coach Prime, and he wasn't able to play up the expectations. He enters the transfer portal. He does really have a lot of options. He has to come to Florida as a preferred walk-on and earn a spot on the team and as, you know, somebody who can get a full-time scholarship. So not only does Cormani McClain earn the spot on the team, but he also earns playing time due to the injuries that Florida had to deal with at cornerback. And he gets a pick 6 against Kentucky. And this offseason, Cormani McClain has slowly been morphing into a monster. He has gained over 20 pounds of muscle reportedly. He has clocked in at 23 miles per hour. He's here in Super Saiyan mode. And Billy Napier, to bring in somebody like this, where we know the potential was there, but was he ever going to be able to get it right up here? It seems like Billy Napier is turning into one of those coaches where if you have a troubled past, you can come to Florida, rehabilitate yourself, And if you are able to work hard, prove yourself, both in the classroom and on the field, you have an opportunity to play. And you have the opportunity to be developed. And at Colorado, the expectations was for Cormani McClain to be good right away. And not every player is able to come into college football and produce at a high level in year one. Not everybody is Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith. Some players have to sit a year, gain weight. Billy Napier, for him to take a player like this and to correct the path that he was on, let's be honest. Most of us thought that it was over for Cormani McClain. You probably thought that he was going to transfer to Florida and you weren't going to hear of this man ever again. Well, he was able to right the ship. I thought that he probably would be hitting the transfer portal again, but for him to be going down this path where he is looked at as a true breakout candidate for Florida this year, the potential is there. He was the best player at his position coming out of high school. So not only is DJ Lackway a huge reason to be excited about Florida's potential this year, but Cormani McClain, with what Billy Napier has done, getting him down the right path again, now he's putting in the work to reach that potential. It hits different when you get something given to you versus when you have to earn something. When he got to Colorado, he kind of was seeking handouts. At Florida, though, there were no handouts. He had to earn every opportunity, which means that he had to work 2 times harder than what he did at Colorado. And maybe Florida was the place that Cormani was always meant to be. But I'm really interested in seeing how this story with him plays out. And if he ends up breaking out, being an all-conference player, one of the better players in the conference, it's more reasons to believe in the future of Florida with Billy Napier as the head coach. Because not every program can take somebody like a Cormani McClain, fix him up, and then have them playing up to their potential coming out of high school. I thought that he was easily going to go to Florida, not do anything, and then hit the transfer portal again. No quarterback in college football last season was hotter than South Carolina's LaNorris Sellers. In his last 8 games, he scored 18 total touchdowns. He rapidly improved throughout the season. He was SEC Freshman of the Year. And in South Carolina's final regular season game against their arch rival Clemson, he had 18 broken tackles and 176 rushing yards after contact. You would have thought you was watching Superman in that game. You would have thought that you was watching the reincarnation of Cam Newton. And the Cam Newton comparison gets thrown out a lot when it comes to quarterbacks that have this physical prototype that LaNorris Sellers has. You know, he's 6'3", 240 plus, runs 4.4, 4.44. And there's a really good possibility that this season, not only is he a Heisman finalist, but he possibly could be the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft. That's how good LaNorris Sellers could be this year. At the beginning of last season, he didn't look that good. But after the Alabama game, he just flipped the switch. Something just started to click. And South Carolina didn't really have a good group of wide receivers. Their offensive line wasn't that good. This season, though, they have a lot more talent in those areas. And LaNorris Sellers, he is the kind of player that has that Cam Newton ability to just completely take over a game to the point where he's just the best player on the field in every single game. No player broke more tackles in the game than what he did against Clemson outside of Ashton Jeanty. He was the only player to have more broken tackles. Clemson got a first-hand glimpse of what LaNorris Sellers is about to be this upcoming season, which is pretty much Superman. With the glasses, he kind of looks somewhat of a version of Clark Kent in a way, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw South Carolina playing in the SEC championship this upcoming season with how good LaNorris Sellers is about to be, with the talent that he just has, just the freakish athleticism, the crazy arm strength, also with how good he is throwing the ball now. He takes incredible care of the football. There isn't anything that LaNorris Sellers can't do. There's not a single play that he can't make. And there are just moments where he can just carry this South Carolina team on his back. And let's not forget, they also have that other monster on the other side of the ball as well. South Carolina, I expect them to be a major factor in the SEC title picture coming up this season, and LaNorris Sellers is a huge reason why. This finally might be the year that Brian Kelly gets LSU into the national championship picture. I know it seems like every season it seems like LSU should already be competing for national titles. How do you not win when you got Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas? I don't know, but with the work LSU has put in recruiting and in the transfer portal, they have the #1 portal class coming into this season. They've been really good at player development as well. They also made major improvements on defense in 2024. The season prior in 2023, they had the worst defense in program history. I could see LSU having one of those years where they make a run. And when LSU is at their best, we know that they're as good as anybody, and they're definitely capable. And they're one of those programs that every 6-7 years, they get to that level where they win a national championship. They're not always as consistent as what Alabama and Georgia have been, but Brian Kelly, yeah, he can be labeled the biggest fraud in college football. He's not as good as what his resume may make you think he is, but he has proven that every once in a while, when he does get a pretty talented team and a favorable schedule like what LSU has coming up, he can put your program in the spot to win a national championship. And with what LSU's bringing in from the transfer portal on offense, especially at wide receiver, you bring in Barry Brown out of Kentucky, who was incredibly underrated, criminally underutilized. This was somebody who was a former top 100 recruit coming out of high school. He has the ability to be an elite kick returner, punt returner as well, elite speed, wiggly after the catch. And he was held back by just completely garbage quarterback play during his time with the Wildcats. So with Garrett Nussmeier, I don't know why I want to keep calling him Gunner, but with Garrett Nussmeier returning this year, giving him somebody in Barry and Brown is going to help him have a Heisman caliber campaign potentially. You also get Nick Anderson, who's a big body, explosive, deep threat. He was the 8th ranked wide receiver out of the portal. And defensively, with Blake Baker entering year 2 and what you have returning, especially bringing back Harold Perkins, who missed the majority of last season due to an ACL injury. He was a projected first-round pick. He also was a true freshman All-American in 2022. With him fully healthy this year, he has game-changing ability where he probably could help you get 2 extra wins. And last year, LSU won 9 games. If you had a healthy Harold Perkins, maybe you win 2 more of those. But with him this year, he easily should be one of the best defensive players in college football. He's been a little bit of a disappointment these last couple of years due to injuries. But when he's on the field, he definitely is a huge game wrecker. And I'm not a huge fan of Brian Kelly, but I'm not biased. And I would be underselling him to say that he hasn't done an okay job at LSU as far as this program always consistently winning 9-10 games. That's exceptionally hard to do in a conference as deep as what the SEC is. Got to give him credit for that. But you expect to compete for national championships. And this looks like the year for LSU to finally be in that mix to win it all with what they bring in with the number one transfer portal class, how good recruiting and player development has been, the major improvements that they've made on defense, going in a year two under defensive coordinator Blake Baker. They should have a big year coming up on D. And I love for Garrett Nussmeier to become one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year. LSU, their ceiling is national championship this year. It feels like it's national title, a bust for Brian Kelly entering his fourth season with the program. Hey, man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. I'm going to be ranking the 10 best rivalries in college football right now. Starting at number 10, I have Iowa versus Iowa State, the battle for the Cy-Hawk. This is the best looking rivalry trophy in college football, in my opinion. This game is throwback football. This rivalry, it's over the last couple of years, it's turned into defensive dominated games that turn into intense one-possession games late in the fourth quarter. Iowa has gotten the better of this rivalry over the last decade, but Iowa State, they've gotten over on the Hawkeyes the last couple of years, and moving forward, it looks like the Cyclones are going to be the better of the two programs, with Iowa trending down under Kirk Ferentz, but this is one of the more underappreciated rivalries in college football right now. At number 9, we have the Holy Roar, BYU versus Utah. This is one of the rivalries that makes college football so great. The state of Utah, you have two schools that are located 50 miles away from each other, and this is a passionate state. Utah, they love their college football, with both of these programs making the move to the Big 12. Last year, this was the most watched this rivalry game has been in 10 years. They brought in over 2 million viewers after dark on ESPN, and it was one of the best games of college football. It had everything that makes rivalry games great: intensity, controversy with the officiating. And over the next couple of years, with how good BYU looked last year and Utah normally being a pretty good team, normally in the playoff conversation, this is a rivalry that slowly is starting to increase in popularity. Not only is it unpopular in the state, but nationally it's gaining more recognition, with ESPN doing a better job putting it in more favorable time slots. And this game just shows that you don't always have to be Alabama versus LSU or a super big brand, although BYU is pretty popular nationwide. They got a huge fan base, a bigger fan base than what you may think. Next up, number 8, South Carolina versus Clemson. This is one of the best in-state rivalries in college football. You have two of the largest universities in the state of South Carolina squaring off for pride and respect. And South Carolina, they treat this event like a spectacle. And throughout the 2010s, Clemson has dominated this rivalry, but South Carolina recently has started to rattle off a couple of wins. They recently had a comeback win last year led by LaNorris Sellers, who turned into Superman in the fourth quarter. And moving forward, expect this game to rank a lot higher on this list in the foreseeable future. You have two programs that right now, Clemson, they already are pretty much a sure playoff team every single year. South Carolina, they came really close to getting in. They had an argument. They were debatably the hottest team in college football at the end of the season, with how well LaNorris Sellers played during the second half of the stretch. But with how well both of these two programs are recruiting, this game is going to have much bigger stakes in the near future, where maybe the winner ends up getting one of the final playoff spots. Florida State versus Miami, I have it at number 7. This game doesn't mean as much as what it used to in the landscape of college football. Miami has been down over the last 2 decades, and Florida State, they've had a few good runs here and there, but for the majority of my lifetime, this game doesn't have the same aura that it used to in the 90s, when at one point when FSU and Miami took the field, the winner most likely was going to the national championship. But Miami looks like they're on the up with Mario Cristobal. Mike Norvell, he did have this program at one point at 13-0, conference champions. They got snubbed from the playoffs. There's an opportunity for him to recapture that magic eventually. I still believe in him. But despite neither one of these programs being as good these last couple of years, when these two teams are able to keep it competitive and they're not getting blown out, this is a pretty good game. You know, I think that it's hard hitting. It's very emotional. You see players that often get unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in this game. Florida State versus Miami, to me, still is the game that decides the state of Florida. When I think of the best rivalry in Florida, the game that comes to the front of my mind is FSU versus Miami, not FSU versus Florida. That's just my opinion. I know you guys are probably going to disagree with me, but hey, that just is what it is. USC versus Notre Dame, the battle for the Jewel Shillelagh. I have it at number 6. This rivalry, it has a mystical feel to it because it's a lot of history and pageantry between these two programs. They have the highest amount of NFL players drafted out of any rivalry duo in college football. They have 24 combined national championships, 15 combined Heisman Trophy winners. Both, you can say, are super hated for some reason. The media, a lot of fans of college football don't seem to like neither one of these programs, but this game just has a really royal feel about it. When you watch this game, it just feels like a soccer event somewhat. It just feels grandiose. It's just something special about this game when you watch it, especially when it gets played on NBC. I feel like NBC does a really good job of broadcasting these Notre Dame games. Like, it's not Notre Dame football if it's not on NBC. And it's just, this rivalry, without it, because I know Colin Cowherd and a few other folks say that this rivalry should go away. Without the USC Notre Dame rivalry, there is no college football. College football is not the same without this rivalry. It's not always about records all the time. Sometimes when you watch the game, you just have to appreciate the history and appreciate the pageantry. Number 5, starting out my top 5, I have the Iron Bowl, Alabama versus Auburn. Alabama has gotten the better of this matchup, and Auburn hasn't been on the same level as Alabama for over the last 14 years. It hasn't really been that close, but the best Auburn has been was when they had Gus Malzahn. They were able to get a few over on Nick Saban, but overall it hasn't really gone Auburn's way in this game. Auburn still has been able to put up some good fights. 2 years ago, it took a prayer from Jalen Milroe to Isaiah Bond to keep their championship hopes alive that year. But this is a game that when it gets played, for the most part, when it's competitive, it's hard hitting, it's really physical. You just feel like it's a rivalry game when you tune into the Iron Bowl. And growing up, when I first got into college football, I remember the kick six. And that's one of the moments that really made me a huge fan of college football. I guess you can say I'm somewhat of a SEC fanboy. This is the conference that I grew up watching the most, other than the Pac-12. But the Iron Bowl's just one of those rivalries where if you just appreciate college football, then you just appreciate this game. It kind of has a similar feel, not quite like Michigan, Ohio State, but a little bit there. It's like, if you don't win this game, it's just a huge disappointment on the season. But because Auburn has been down for so many years, you kind of just expect that you got no shot to win this game. But Auburn has the ability to be on the same level as Alabama. That's what's crazy about it. Will they ever be able to maximize all those resources and facilities that they have? Time will tell. Number 4, Alabama comes in again. Alabama versus LSU. This rivalry is featuring two of the powerhouses of the SEC. When you talk about programs that consistently pump out NFL players year after year, normally are in the conversation for the national championship. LSU has the ability to win national championships consistently. It's just the coaching hasn't been there always, but they've had a few years where they've popped off, especially that 2019 team. And when these two teams play, I know this past season Alabama completely destroyed LSU, but Brian Kelly got one over on Nick Saban with Jaden Daniels one time, and that's when he had Bryce Young. So it's not like this rivalry has been completely one-sided, but I feel like this game is about to become a little bit more interesting. With Kalen DeBoer, we don't really know what to expect from this program moving forward, and LSU, with what they've been doing in the transfer portal and recruiting lately, it's about time for Brian Kelly and the Tigers to make a run, and possibly they start turning the tides in this rivalry. At number 3, I got the Army-Navy game. This game represents everything that's great about college football. A game like Army-Navy is more than just football. It's a game that celebrates the people that protect our country, and it's more so of a game that's tailored to a specific audience. And that's what makes college football special. The regionality of these games. And the Army-Navy is so special that it gets played on its own individual week. It never should change. It always should be played in that kind of environment. The cold weather, the snow, that's just the kind of weather that you envision when you think of the people who protect our country. It kind of gives me war vibes. I like watching the Army-Navy game when I'm able to catch it. If not, I always make sure that I watch the highlights. It's fun watching the triple option. Of course, when they get a few passing plays here and there, it's fun to watch because it's like, oh, they finally completed the pass. But I just like this game because it's one of those rivalries that makes college football great. It's random. It's about regionality. It's tailored to its own specific audience. But if you're a diehard fan of college football, you love this rivalry. You understand what it means to this game. Number 2, we got the Red River rivalry. Both of these two programs flat out hate each other, and it feels like Texas should have more wins over Oklahoma than what they've had over these last couple of years, but Oklahoma has been the better of these two programs. But it seems like Texas gets the spotlight more than what Oklahoma does for some reason. But this is the second best rivalry in college football to me, because when both of these two programs are at their best, this is a very good game. And this is, if it wasn't for the game that we have at number 1, it probably would be the best one in college football. But it's just, the game that we have at 1 just has higher stakes than what Oklahoma and Texas has. And before we get to number one, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. So the best rivalry in college football, coming in at number one, is Michigan versus Ohio State. When they call this rivalry the game, the name really lives up to its reputation. Over the last couple of seasons, this game has felt like it's had the weight of the world on the line. The winner ends up winning the national championship, or at least having the opportunity to compete for it. And the loser, they either have an outside chance of getting into the playoffs and their season ends in disappointment. And even if the winner does win a national championship, it just doesn't feel right not winning this game. This game isn't as big as the national championship, but it just has so many implications in it. Just with the hate, the animosity between the two fan bases. And I want you guys to think about something. Last year, Michigan's season was on the brink of being a massive disappointment until they won this game. This game, for Sharon Moore being able to win it, shifted the entire narrative about how he was perceived and how the direction of the program was viewed, with him taking over this squad from Jim Harbaugh. Now you have more buy-in when it comes to the NIL back end. You got more recruiting momentum. They're now prioritizing the transfer portal a lot more. They also use this momentum from the win they got in this game last season, and they carried over to them clobbering Auburn in the ReliQuest Bowl. Ohio State, Ryan Day, his biggest bugaboo has been his inability to win this matchup. And this game really hits different with him not being able to win it. And it's to the point where some fans might want him fired just because he just can't win this game alone. And that just tells you how much this game means in college football. No other fan base is screaming for their coach to get fired, who consistently wins at least 10 games, 2 losses every single year, but one of those 2 losses comes in this rivalry. It just means more. That's why they call it the game.